Hi, everyone. Welcome to the TestOut Live Webinar Summit 2020. A little bit a fun situation with a pandemic covering the United States. But today we're going to be talking about moving our Microsoft classes online using TestOut. I'm going to introduce my panelists. Hopefully you can all see them here. We've got Sally Wild. She is a teacher in a secondary environment, also a digital tech coach for her school district and working with her specific high school teachers. And Ezra Mintz, a distinguished professor from Strayer University, who's been online for a couple years now and teaching with TestOut in our Microsoft course. Welcome, you guys. Is there anything you'd like to say about yourself? We're going to make you famous today.
Hi guys, this is no fun right now for most of us. It's really challenging, and so hopefully we can talk through some of those challenges and some of the things that now that some of us have been here for 4 weeks, we've got a good feel for. So for those who have just started this week or aren't comfortable yet, we'll be able to help you as you make this transition.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching online for a little while now, so this is, of course, the world situation is new for us as well, but definitely look forward to sharing some of the things that I've found out over my years teaching with TestOut so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ezra, we're all moving towards your environment, and and something I'm just going to point out right at the beginning here is one thing that I keep bringing up to teachers is this is a little bit different than just a normal online environment. This is by no way, if I were going to tell you as an instructor that you're going to teach an online course, I'd give you resources, I'd give you time, I'd give you professional development, I would help you with some of the things that would be beneficial to you as you move into an online course. Now, of course, we're not in that environment, and I posted on Twitter the other day an article I read about how this is more of a triage type education. We're just helping learning continue right now for a lot of institutions. But the goal today, we're going to talk about how TestOut can facilitate and help you as an instructor, if you're teaching Microsoft Office applications, have a great experience for the students and have them learn the necessary skills that I always tell teachers 5 years from now when they leave your class, we want them to be able to be proficient in these applications. They're going to use them every day in their careers, and so it's important that they gain a good understanding of these applications. Okay, a couple housekeeping items. So let me just jump into my first slide here before we get started. Facebook users, if you're used to using Facebook, would love to have you join our TestOut instructor community. Our TestOut instructor community, we've developed it. We started out with just the high school group, but we've moved it into our post-secondary environment and allowed them, we're letting them come into it too. But it's a great place where we can collaborate, share ideas, especially right now, share resources that you're using. So check that out. Just do a search under your Facebook page for TestOut Instructor Community. Feel free to ask questions. We'd love to have the questions, keep it engaging. Aubrey Barnett's, I'd say she's back at the home office, but she's in her basement as well, answering questions, and we'll answer those throughout. If we don't answer them during the session, don't worry, we'll loop it back around and reach out to you individually. Want to connect on Twitter? Check out TestOut Corp. My Twitter hashtag Wild Travis. I love sharing. I was telling Ezra, I share 2 things: Utah Jazz basketball and educational stuff. Sally, what do you share on Twitter? You've gotten more active over the last couple of years.
The last couple of weeks, I've gotten more active, and it's mostly just educational stuff, what's going on in my classroom, ways I can celebrate my students.
Yeah, you can learn a lot from your colleagues. Twitter is a pretty good educational environment to do that, and there's a lot of educational forums, other online webinar discussion groups that are going on Twitter right now to help you as a resource too. Also check out our 2 websites, testout.com as well as testout.com/K12 for anybody in the secondary environment. Let's see if we can get, apparently there's a lot of people that are saying they cannot hear. Let me just pause real quick, and I don't know how to check and see if we're able to hear. We'll go ahead and ask a question to start it out here. send to all. I'm just going to ask a question. Sorry, new to this interface, and so you can hear fine. I'm hearing fine. Okay, can everybody seem to hear okay? Sounds better. Okay, I think we got the audio figured out. I'm getting used to wearing a headset all day long. That's one to deal with there. Okay, so hopefully we can. It's like okay. Apparently had a little glitch maybe in the webinar, but it looks like it's working fine now. So we'll continue on. Hey, let's start with the poll question though to the group out there. Let's see. What's been your experience with teaching online classes? I'm going to launch this question. Couple options here for you. I recently started teaching online courses. I've integrated some aspects of online curriculum, or I've been teaching online for a while. So we'll give it a second here. We've got just under 100 teachers throughout the nation that are tuning in today to our webinar here. So let's get a feel for it. We'll let it run for a second. I'll tell you, I did an earlier session with an instructor down in Florida today, and it looks like we're about what they were earlier today. So let me go ahead and let's give it one more second here. Looks like about most of you voted. Okay, so 40% of you are saying that you just recently started. 25%, you've integrated some aspects online, and 35%. So it's really pretty close to about a third of you doing everything. So some of you brand new, some of you this is old hat and new to you, and then some you've kind of got that blended learning model. So. All right, let's jump into our first slide here, and this is going to be some of our conversation topics as Sally, Ezra, and myself as we talk about TestOut, as we talk about online learning. But let's see if we can't help each other out. And if you have any questions, once again, please put those into there's a place where you can ask a question. Aubrey will help me get those throughout the meeting if we can answer them, or she'll answer them individually as well. Okay, so let's take a look at our first slide here. Okay, Ezra, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your situation, what you've been doing as far as Strayer University. You mentioned you teach up to 2,000 students currently, right now?
Correct.
That's
so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cut you off. So at Strayer, I teach around 2,000 students a term, and we have an interesting model. But one of the key components of my class is using TestOut. And so, a big part of using TestOut for me is getting the students ramped up and ready to go early on in the term. We just started a quarter here at TestOut or at Strayer this term. So now, my big process is helping students just start to access the material, not feel defeated from the get-go, just feel confident in their ability to access TestOut from the beginning of the term.
Right, and you and I were talking the other day, that initial login and getting set up, that can sometimes present a challenge for you. And Sally, I'll let you chime in here too, but tell us a little bit about what you specifically do to help your students just with that initial login. Now, Strayer has their own individual platform that they're running. Are they logging in through that platform, or they were logging in through TestOut.com? What does that look like for your school?
Yeah, so at Strayer, students will log in to TestOut through Blackboard. So that makes it a little bit easier for the students because they can just access the course directly without setting up another account, memorizing a different password or whatnot. But even still then, it presents challenges with students, and especially this is an entry-level course to college. So you have a lot of students who aren't sure about Blackboard, and then you add TestOut in on top of that, and they have a lot of questions. So my main strategy, and I know this has a negative connotation, but I like to spam students. And but what I mean by that is give them a lot of resources. We talked about teaching online, and even this is a new environment for teaching online, even though I've been teaching online for a while. And now with this added pandemic and the crises around that, you have to break through the noise and help students even more. So sending them the resources, whether that's videos or FAQ sheets or however that looks like, but that's really my main focus early on in the term, is getting students the answers they need so they can feel confident.
Right, and Sal, you'd mentioned you'd helped some of the other teachers just to develop something. Hey, here's some getting started tips and tricks, and any thoughts or anything you want to add on to that? I like it as a term spam. I mean, really, that this is something every semester or every beginning of class you're going to reuse, right? You don't need to reinvent this, but it's a number one challenge is that initial login. Sally, thoughts on that?
Right. And so I know people across the country, when it comes to public education, are using different types of platforms. In
Right.
my school district, we kind of have a choice. Certain teachers have had their own websites and they've been using their own websites, and so their students are used to that. So they said keep using that. We also have Canvas in our school district, which quite a few teachers luckily have been using, and that's a great platform. Everything's built in. A lot of other people are just using Google Classroom. So whatever you're using or whatever you decided to use as your platform to teach online through this pandemic, and there's going to be features built in, or whether you're just sending, messages through the SMS, through Skyward, whatever that type of communication looks like. I've helped teachers make screencasts of the steps to log in so that they can show, but then also it's really helpful to write out the steps in order for your students to know, okay, I have to do this and this. There's all types of learners out there. There's the visual, and then there's the ones that just want to see it or written down. And in high school, we also get to deal with our parents. Well, the students and the parents, and they're both saying different things, and the parents want to know, did you really tell my kid how to do this? And so communication to everybody is really important to make sure that, yes, parents, your kids have been told how to do this, and here's a video that I sent them so you can help them as well.
Right. Ezra, are you using some of the instructor teaching aids that are found on the TestOut website? And let me just highlight those on the viewer's screen here. So on our homepage, underneath support, under educator resources, you'll see a lot of these getting started points that Ezra and Sally are talking about. And one of the big things I'm going to bring back to Sally is it's that communication, right? That's the number one challenge. And so Ezra, you've got your way of doing it, and so in a secondary environment, it's communicating also to the parents, right? That's an excellent point. So I'll just point out, go through some of these resources here. You'll see tutorials as well as teaching aids, and we have them broken up into both the higher ed and the high school environments here. So, okay, any other thoughts about getting started? I mean, screencast, Ezra, do you create your own screencast or video recordings of kind of that, or are you using some of the TestOut resources?
Yeah, I use a lot of my own videos, but it really goes back to what Sally said. Whatever resources you have at your disposal, whether they're straight from TestOut or capturing your screen is super easy for you, then there's definitely multiple ways to get that information to students.
Right. That. What about I had a teacher earlier today, the Remind app, some of those applications to help communicate. Are you guys using anything like that and seeing anything used in your environments?
I know with teachers in the secondary, a lot of teachers already have the Remind app, and students have been using that all year. So that's something great that's already built in and they're used to, that they are using. In our district, we found out, was it like 2-3 weeks ago, that the emails from Skyward that we thought we were sending to parents and students weren't actually going to students. And so parents were getting a whole bunch of emails, but we weren't doing a great job of communicating with our students. And so whatever you decide, Remind, kind of like Ezra said, spam them. Do one of everything. Do it through regular email. Do it through your Remind. I spent couple hours the second week that we were in here making phone calls home, and I just *6-7 so they wouldn't have my personal number, and it was really interesting. The parents at first, all of them were really nervous that their kid was in trouble, and really it was just, I was trying to gauge, these were students that aren't usually failing. It was the end of the quarter for us, and I wanted to make sure that they were able to log in and get the information that they needed to be able to be successful still in this type of an environment.
Right. Hey, Ezra, I'm just curious, with such a big group, tell me what that looks like for you. Are you able to see if students are logging in, or what kind of systems in place to make sure students are getting in that initial engagement? So we're talking about reaching out multiple ways, email, apps within Blackboard in the discussion group. But I mean, is that a challenge? I, see, I can't imagine 2,000 students and you're trying to figure out if they've all even just logged in yet, right?
Sure, yeah. And one of the things I like about the way, Strayer has this course designed is that the actual graded work doesn't happen until a few weeks deep into the term. So that gives a lot of time for students to start accessing the material and start learning. And then I can look at different reports, see different reports in TestOut. But also, by the time we get to that first graded lab, it's very clear which students need that extra help and even more spamming or even more tutorials versus the students who are ready to go.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring into the audience view, I don't know, the viewer's view. Let me bring in just one of the reports, and so within TestOut, you're going to see lots of resources and tools. So as Sally mentioned, her administration is very concerned of whether or not a student, once again, if we're in a non-pandemic environment, this might look a little bit different, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're still trying to make sure that the students have engaged and started into things. So just one of the, I usually don't even share this report when I do a demonstration, but it's a product usage report. So you could come in here, you could filter out by a date. So we could just say, hey, this first initial week, so Ezra can pull a report for his 2,000 students and figure out which ones have done anything over the first, month, week, whatever it is. But we can then, or in Sally's case, if you've got a high school, you could then take this list, hey, here's who has not even logged in yet, send that over to the counselor or administration to say, hey, these students need help in this online environment, because if we never get them initially logged in, we failed already, correct? So thoughts,
right.
questions?
You're kind of talking, TestOut's great, and once the students get in there, it's consistent and they'll get it, but a lot of the problem is just getting them engaged. And what I've been finding in my classroom, and I don't know what you guys have been finding, a lot of times it's those same students that we have problems with. They come to class, they put their heads down on their desk, and they're not engaged in class, that are also not being engaged online as well. And so what can we do to reach them? But then the ones that we really need to be worried about are the ones that usually are engaged in class if we aren't seeing them. And so these reports are great if we're not seeing them actually logging in and doing the things. Those are the ones we need to be concerned about. What's going on in their home life, or what's happening that is causing them problems to get logged in to be able to access the information.
Yeah, so Sally, maybe you could share just a couple of steps you've built in with some of the teachers you've been working with of kind of how you're reaching out to those students, or what does that look like for you? I mean, because and I apologize, Ezra, I talk to high school teachers and I know this is a big one, but I just want to make sure we get both sides of the spectrum here.
And really it's going to be what you're comfortable with. I'm not the expert. And so what I'm comfortable with, I'm comfortable making phone calls, maybe you're not comfortable making phone calls, and that's okay. But there are people probably at your school who will help you out. And I know at our school, the counselors have said, hey, make us a list of the kids that you haven't seen no action from on your online environment, and we'll start making those phone calls. Put a bug in your administrator's ears, give them something to do right now. They probably don't want me saying that, but they can help out too. We have 200 plus students. If you're Ezra, you have 2,000. Wow, I thought my job was hard. But where the students are paying for them, ours, we're responsible for making sure they're moving along in the process. And so it really is going to be different. If you're using Canvas can send emails out. Once you get your Skyward figured out, Skyward can send emails out. And at least I'm finding it's really good to send the emails to the student and the parents. Remind, if you're using Remind, keep using it. Whatever you've been doing, be consistent. And if you haven't been using anything, figure out what's going to work. I have found out from experience now that we're 4 weeks in here, but also from talking to people, some teachers in China, actually, they said it took 2 to 3 weeks to develop a routine. And that was a consistent routine that the teachers have been doing. And so maybe if you were kind of wiggly washy the first couple weeks, you're not there yet. And so it's going to take a while to schedule that routine for you and for the students to be able to pick up on that. And, you know, some of our students, some of the ones I've been talking to, they're picking up hours. They're working at these essential jobs, restaurants, and if their parents have been laid off, these are the sad cases that they are going into work more hours because they're helping support their families right now. Also, a lot of my students will be honest. They'll say, hey, we wake up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we do homework. It's usually when you're not online anymore, it's at 6 to 8 in the evening or in the middle of the night, and their schedules are completely messed up.
Yeah. Ezra, I'm going to pull the conversation back over to you, and let's talk little bit about what you're using as far as integration with your Blackboard environment. Tell us a little bit about how you're using a Blackboard environment in association with TestOut.
Sure. Yeah. So when students come into Blackboard, it's going to be an item on their to-do list, depending on the week. So they'll have 1, 2, 3, however many labs due that week. And it's also not the only thing in the class. So we also have them doing discussions, and the lab work that they do contributes to their assignments. Or, you know, as they learn these skills, then they practice them by actually turning in an assignment in Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever the case may be. So
right.
We use TestOut as a way to learn these materials, and then we practice them in the real world, so to speak, by actually having them turn in Word files with their actual assignment on it.
Okay. And I want to point out one, I was trying to bring it in here while you were talking here. Let me see if I can do this. I'm trying to figure out which screen this is on. I apologize. I don't know if you've used it, the course schedule creator, and if you've seen it, a lot of instructors, this is a newer piece that we put into the teaching aids. But as you're talking about having your students and assigning them out into Blackboard, and that's a great thing about Canvas or Blackboard, we can offer the assignments through there. Within the TestOut interface, we kind of don't have that functionality, but you can give out the assignments here. And so let's just say we're going to finish off this next 6 weeks here, and we're going to focus on the Excel chapter for an instructor. Once again, this is found in your teaching aids within the course. You can come in here, you can select the weeks that you'll go through. So let's say I'm going to work over the next 7 weeks here, and we're going to take a look at the Excel chapter. This will break down each section into how much time each student's going to require on it, and each week as a pacing guide for me as an instructor. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is just in creating this course is understanding where you should be and when. Ezra, most of your starts, what kind of time frame are they looking at to get through it?
For the entire term?
Well, yeah. So what you're covering in a term, and how long that period is for you.
So we don't have, that's fair, we don't have them cover the entirety of the content in each section. So it'll be a kind of a quick 2 weeks on each of the major applications in Microsoft Office.
And so they're going through these rather quickly. And in a typical high school environment, you could actually, in this course schedule creator, for most high schools, they're going to go through Excel, Word, Access, PowerPoint, and they're going to split it up over the course of the year, try to get through 4 applications. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually jump in right here, Trav. The university and Strayer and online, you got those of you who have been in an online environment already, your students are used to it, and that's what they're picking and they're choosing. What we're finding with students is that this online environment is a struggle for them. It's a struggle to stay focused and to sit in front of their computers that long all day. And so my advice to you two, regardless of what you're choosing, the content creator, the course creator, that's great. Don't overwhelm your students with high school. So be realistic, set realistic boundaries, be lenient, extend your dates. And then, what I've been telling my teachers at the beginning is what you usually would do in class, cut that in half. And then once you start, maybe consider cutting it in half again once you see what your students are able to do. And I'm not trying to say, we should dumb down education and make it easy for everybody, because that's definitely not what our goals of teachers are. is, but we want to make this accessible and we want learning to still happen. We just don't want them to feel completely overwhelmed. They've got their core classes, but they have all these other electives too. And so they somehow have to swim through doing all of these at home without a teacher with them throughout the course, as they're doing the work, being able to tell them and help them and show them step by step. Luckily, though, TestOut has so many helps and videos that can help them along the way. So it makes it so much easier than other classes. But just be aware of the workload that you're loading on to these
right,
students.
especially in this, I mean, once again, we're in a unique situation. So if we're talking, this fall at a new start, this is going to be totally different. So let's actually talk Microsoft Office. That's why we're here, right? So let's jump in here. Ezra, tell us a little bit about, we're going to start out, and one thing that as we talked going into this meeting, Ezra, was just the consistency of the platform and what students are going to see. So maybe walk us through of what you're doing with the students, and so those unfamiliar with TestOut, what we're going to see in each section: video lessons, fact sheet pages, and then 3 types of labs. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, and I'll kind of navigate through the course here, and we can talk about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one thing I really do like about TestOut is you do have, there's that opening period where you want to get students all set up and ready to go. But after that, basically every week or however often they're working in TestOut, it's going to be the same technology each time. Different content, of course, but the same technology. So when they hop into the labs, they'll have the videos and they can go ahead and read along with the notes if they want to, or they could just watch the video itself. And I think that's crucial depending on, like Sally mentioned, you do have different types of learners. So that's going to be an important way to help the students access this content. Maybe they are doing work at midnight, so they don't want to play a video lab, so they're going to read through the material. It's up to the students, and they do have that ability there.
Right. And Sally, you were actually helping one of your teachers out, creating a screencast when you reach out to them and say, hey, can we help with TestOut? So tell me, I mean, video, you've been setting up teachers, showing them how to do videos. We've already got videos created for you to help save the teachers time. Thoughts, questions? One thing I will point out, go ahead.
I was just going to say the video functionality, like Ezra said, and the reading, it's great for students, whether they choose to read, whether they choose to watch, that they have the options. And sometimes, they might have watched, but they might have missed something. So being able to have the text there that they can go back and reference the information they need to be able to get what they need out of the course.
One thing I always like to point out to teachers is the interactive script that's playing on the right-hand side of the screen also becomes a navigation tool. So if you wanted to come in here and jump into using sections, and I just click here and it allows me to jump ahead to that part of the video. So it makes it easy to come back in, navigate through it. And let me just point out a couple accessibility features. These are key. Once again, it's that accessibility to allow this for the benefit of all learning types. So we'll have both closed captioning as well as the speed control, and then having the written text versus the visual. That's a big benefit. And we'll bring in some of these different graphics and presentations to help teach the concepts. One thing, let me point out, because I have had quite a few conversations about students in rural environments that might not have internet access. The ability to print or copy any of the text found within the course is there in your teaching aids as well. So if you have a student in a rural environment, that's an option. Okay, so video lessons will always be followed by fact sheet pages. For the fact sheet pages, this is for the most part a review of what was covered in the video lessons. Ezra, anything special you're doing with the fact sheet pages?
I like to just alert students to it. Again, it's just another piece of information for them to master and to read over. I like repetition, as evidenced by my spam comment. So having the student have this information in multiple forms is very helpful for them.
Right. One thing I've been pointing out to teachers, something they could do, because once again, it's that student engagement that we're adjusting a lot of them to in an online environment with the teacher. You could print some of these out. You could share them in an email. You could also use some of the PowerPoint slides in conjunction with the fact sheet pages to, once again, communicate. Here's what we're talking about today. Here's what you should be going through. So using them that way. Okay, let's take a look at the lab environment. I mean, this is what TestOut is known for. It's lab sim environment. We're going to start with 10 tasks in this particular one. Let's see, I'm in the PowerPoint section. Ezra, point out some of the things that really benefit you as you're teaching and for benefits for your students.
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first thing is that you have the tasks, and one of my favorite features in TestOut is the hint and the show me features down in the bottom left there. And sometimes students tell me, oh, I don't want to use the hint or the show me features because it shows me how to do it or it provides a step-by-step walkthrough of how to do it. And I tell them, don't be worried about that because it won't give you credit, right? So if you really just use the hint or show me feature, it will make you do it again. And again, right. I love repetition. So it has them do it properly. And then, maybe they need to repeat it twice, depending on the concept, how difficult it is or not. But really, I love those hint or show me features to help them and to build that repetition so that they're learning how to do it through multiple attempts, if necessary. Sometimes they
right. Right, and let me just pause it in a moment here. I've been crazy busy, and the reason being because this is all done in a browser-based application. The students don't need to download anything. They don't need to run the live application. One of the biggest challenges in a high school environment right now is multiple applications. Office 365 is maybe all they have, or they're running Office 2010. And so we're able to bring all that back into one user interface, whether it's 16 or 19, and we're able to teach these concepts all in their browser. So that's awesome. I'm going to go ahead. The hint button. So we're asked to go through these 10 items here. The hint button is going to populate. Let's just take this first one. Create a new blank presentation. Now, you guys, I can even do this one. Watch this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank presentation and ask me to close it out. They get automatic feedback. Good job, Travis. You're amazing here. So that's one of our features in here that's going to allow the students, hey, you're doing this right. You can move on to the next task. But as we mentioned, if they get stuck on something, two help features. Bottom one here, both a hint button, and if I scroll down just a little bit forward below that, I have a show me button. I'm going to let this one run, and Ezra, I'll let you give some feedback on this, and Sally, if you want to chime in with something as well, and then I'll tell you what a teacher down in Miami once told me about it. So let me let this run.
To create a new presentation using a particular
Can you guys hear that?
template, select the File tab. On the left side of the window, select New. Select the Metropolitan theme. To close the new presentation, click the X in the upper right corner of the PowerPoint window.
Okay, so there I get a walkthrough tutorial of how to do it. Ezra, thoughts on how much the show me button? What are your students saying about that?
It just breaks down the barriers. When I have a student who says, I get this a lot, I can't do this. Well, let's start with that first question. If you need to, click the show me feature. Like you said, for the first one, maybe they can do it by themselves without the show me feature, depending on how new they are. But just do that. You can watch a video. You can watch a 16-second video and then follow along afterwards. So it just breaks down that barrier where if the student's willing to buy in, there's so much material here to help them grasp it.
Right. Sally, any thoughts on any of the video or help features here?
Well, like I said before, I've been having to teach teachers how to make screencasts using Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, Zoom or Loom, and yet here in TestOut you don't need to because the videos are here for you, and clicking on that show me button is going to walk them through very simple steps and they'll be able to do it. Any of us could do that, and they'll be able to too. And this will be nice too. When parents email you saying, hey, my student can't do this, then you'll be able to say, okay, look, here's a link to this video. It can show you, it can show them that you can do this.
Yeah, and maybe encourage the parents to buy and do that. I'm going to go ahead and do this one. So file, let's see, I watched the video. I've done this one a few times lately. Metropolitan theme. We're going to open it up and then close it out. And this is a key for me, is we're going to get this automatic feedback a little bit differently. And Ezra, you kind of hinted that your students are now required to go back in and do it again. What do they think of that? Do they like it? Do they get frustrated by that if they do it?
I think the students who are really wanting to learn the concepts enjoy this because it does give them the chance to practice. with all teaching and students, it's helping them believe in the end outcome, where they're able to market this and use this in their daily lives. So that exists in every curriculum. But I think that the students who are really invested, they enjoy that feature. I certainly praise it a lot when I talk to students.
Right. I had a teacher down in Miami-Dade public schools that once told me that the show me button, she's like, Travis, that show me button saves me so much time. Not only just because of what Sally's talking, if you're moving into an online environment, but it's the tool that really helps the students. I think you said, bridge the gap. Whatever you said, Ezra, it was really good. I was thinking that would be a good line to quote. But they can do it, right? They can see that they can do it and then jump in and do it themselves. So that's been a big benefactor. Let me just point out for those that are once again new to the TestOut environment, this is a full-scale simulation of Microsoft PowerPoint in this case. So I could even come in here, and what we're after is those task items up here. I would like to point out I can come in here and change this to Travis is awesome. It's not going to matter. What we're after is the skill set that we're after to help them go through these tasks. We're going to take them through all 10 tasks. Now, the nice thing for you all instructors, since Ezra has 2,000 students, all of this is auto-graded into his gradebook. So we'll see that I got credit for number one, but I did not get credit for the second one because I didn't go back in and do it and self-remediate after using a help feature. And that's a big part of the TestOut methodology through the Office course, in my opinion. It's that repetition that Ezra, you keep mentioning. It's that repetition learning, and you're coming in here, you're doing it again until you feel comfortable and confident with what you're doing. Any last thoughts on the skills lab before I jump on through the course here? You guys good? Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to the next lab that they'll see, which is the challenge lab. Here we're looking for speed and proficiency. Ezra, tell me your student experience with the challenge lab.
So I think the thing about TestOut is it really appeals to all learners who are willing to put in the work, but this certainly appeals to the top performers, those students who are looking for a challenge and not even, this is your type A type of students who really enjoy this type of lab because it allows them to race against each other, for correctness, obviously, but also for speed.
And really that's what we're looking for, is that speed and proficiency. And their employers, I can tell you what, their employers are looking for speed and proficiency too. The last thing you want to do is hire someone that has no idea how to do things, and they spend half their time maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet, and they're the last thing you want is your employee spending 5 minutes out of the day trying to Google every 5 minutes. They have to Google how I do a particular task. So here we're looking for speed and proficiency. So we did have a question in here that said, how is this auto graded? So let me just start this lab. And the big difference here between the skills lab and the challenge lab is the first one, we're going to put them on a clock. So we're looking for that speed, and then proficiency. We're trying to encourage them away from some of the help features. Notice that when I do click begin, and we'll let this lab start up, the show me button is gone, but we've left the hint button in here. So the students are not going to get stuck. We're going to leave a help feature in that they can get stuck, but we're going to take away the show me. So let's just go through. So the goal here is, I'm going to try to answer the question, how is this auto graded? The goal is we're going to take them through these particular tasks, dealing with each section of the Microsoft application. Once I complete the task, it will grade and recognize that I've done that particular task. So let's see, where did the Metropolitan theme? So once again, if I come through here, top left-hand corner, it'll give me instructions of what I'm asked to do. Now, last time I used a help feature to accomplish the opening the Metropolitan theme. This time, I'm not going to. And so I'll come in here, I'll go to open, new. I'll go to Metropolitan theme, and then we're going to close it out. So once I complete that task, it'll grade it and say, yes, you've done this, you know that skill, let's move on to the next task. Okay, any last thoughts about the challenge lab here?
Well, so I think maybe the question too was, so it grades it and it keeps it in TestOut in your classes that are set up. And then depending on whether you're using Blackboard or Canvas integration, sometimes it will bring those scores over for you. Otherwise, you open up your double screens and you bring your scores over.
Right. Let me just point out all the top information you see in this lab report, how much time and the score that I have is what is being reported to the gradebook. And that's a great point, Sally. So all of this can be exported. Well, if you're synced with your Canvas environment, all the grade return can be auto graded and put back into your Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle or Schoology, whatever LTI1 compliant LMS you're using. So yeah, great question. Hopefully that answered the question for auto grading there. Okay, let's move on to the last lab that we're going to walk through today, and that's the applied lab. Ezra, I'm going to go to you again. What's the experience with the students on the applied lab?
Very similar to the other labs. You know, you have your students and working through the material, and you know, again, some students will get stuck, and here you don't have the helps as much. So this is time where you know the teaching can really come into play and helping students navigate their ways through the applied labs.
Right. So here we're taking away all automatic feedback. We're taking away the help features. We're even taking away the clock. Welcome to is what I tell teachers. Welcome to the real world. Here's a PowerPoint presentation. Here's how I need it formatted. So if your boss said, hey, I need you to put these slides together this way, this is what we're asked to do, right? And let me just point out, once again, this does not require a download of Microsoft Office. And they'll always be working on the latest version if that's the version the school's on. So let's just walk through the first couple of these, reverse the order of the second and third slides. So we'll come in here, reverse the orders. I'm doing really good, guys. Delete the fourth and fifth slides. But at this point, I don't know if I'm doing good because there's no automatic feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the fourth slide. And I'm going to delete the fifth slide that now moved up. Now, we're not going to find out until we actually score the lab. So I'm going to go ahead and score the lab and see how I'm doing here. And luckily enough for this demonstration, I didn't embarrass myself and I got the first two right there. But self-remediation is actually going to come back in a little bit differently. Instead of the help features, we'll see the lab report with step-by-step directions if I scroll through here of how to complete any of the tasks if I would have failed them. Tell me, are you using how do your students use the lab report maybe in your environment, Ezra? Or are they just on their own and then work back through this?
So it's really up to the student what they want to do. They'll reach out to me with any questions, or I will probe them if they have not completed a lab or whatnot. Generally, though, not a whole lot of students will reach out after completing the applied labs, and I think they're using the materials in TestOut to understand the content.
Excellent. One thing I'll point out, this is TestOut's meant to be a multiple pathway environment, meaning if, let's say you're used to using hotkeys, especially in Excel. I know a lot of people use hotkeys in Excel or in Word even. If you're used to using hotkeys, that'll work. We'll correct it. We'll grade it appropriately. That's an appropriate way to do it. Now, I do have a lot of, especially high school teachers as well. What about if we're testing it for the test? And I will tell you, any of our lab reports will be ribbon-centric. The Microsoft Office Specialist exam is pretty ribbon-centric on the way they approach and would recommend it being taught. But if you're using hotkeys, that'll work as well. Okay. All right. Tell me anything else you'd like to share, Ezra, maybe how you're using the product and helping with your students.
I think that there's a clear pattern of those students who are diving into the course in TestOut and then their work outside of TestOut in Blackboard specifically. I think those students who are willing to dive in are performing really well in the course. So helping all students get started and then helping the students make their way through the material, it's just going to prepare them for the material, not only in the course, but also as they continue on in life, jobs, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to pull back to the original slides here. Just kind of recap here. So as far as teachers, take advantage of some of these resources here, the lesson plans, the course schedule creator, the PowerPoint slides, and use these to engage your students. Right now, once again, we're in a little bit different world, and hopefully we don't stay in this forever, but education kind of gets back to a little bit more traditional. But I want to point out the adaptability. And so we're talking a couple different environments here. As you're fully online, 2,000 students. Sally, you're representing high schools with maybe 50 kids in 2 sections. And whether it's a traditional, whether it's a blended, whether it's a completely online, TestOut can adapt to all these environments. So I just want to point out that, and I always tell teachers, our goal at TestOut is not for you to adapt your teaching style to us. It's for TestOut to adapt to your teaching style, the way you feel comfortable. And Sally, you kind of pointed this out earlier. It's maybe you're not the teacher that picks up the phone and calls your student and says, "Hey, I noticed you haven't done anything," but maybe you're sending them a text message, maybe it's an email, maybe it's you're getting a counselor involved. But it's very adaptable there. Let's see. I think let's see how people are paying attention here. Let's ask them a poll question. I want to know what's been the biggest struggle with teaching online classes. So I'm going to launch this poll question here. I've got a couple of different, click launch here. Keeping students motivated, teaching the curriculum, communicating with students, not having the right equipment, and just general technology. So let's see what we got going on here. All right. All right, let's go ahead and give it a few more seconds. All right. Number one answer on the board, keeping students motivated. And a lot of that has to do with the teacher engagement. And I think what you guys were pointing out at the very beginning, if they can have a good beginning, a good start, and I apologize because I felt like we spent a lot of time at the very beginning of how to make that first initial experience good, but I think that's so critical in keeping the students motivated, that they get in right, that they understand what's expected of them. Any thoughts or questions on that?
Ezra, you're the pro here. You've been doing this for a while. What do you do at college to keep your students motivated? I mean, they're intrinsically motivated because they're paying for the class, but anything else?
Yeah, I think sending out kudos along the way, right? To one of the things is, in any class, I think we spend 90% of our time as teachers with 10% of the students, trying to motivate them, trying to help them, but also, realizing, especially early on, giving in, hey, you're awesome. It's funny, college versus high school and all that stuff, but students in college enjoy you're doing great. Here's like a sticker. It's obviously not a real sticker, but something along those lines, like, hey, you're rocking, keep going. So that's an important part after the students have started well. But then, of course, it always is helping to motivate those students who are maybe a little slower to pick up these things and getting them active, involved, tutorials, whatever the case may be, whatever's going to help them get going as well.
Right. By the way, if you want to type in any questions, we're going to do a little Q&A here in just a second. I want to point out, though, number 2, and so there is a little format where you can type in a question. Would love to answer any questions you might have. Number 2 was just the communicating with students. And once again, sorry we spent a lot of time on that, but that's huge, especially right now where, once again, we're in a weird environment, a pandemic environment where a lot of schools and teachers are being forced into this. This is our only option to keep education rolling. So we're doing this. But in a standard, typical, hey, I've got time to plan and prepare for it, there's lots of resources out there to help communicate with students. So whether that's your LMS, whether that's an email, whether that's Remind apps, there are ways in which you can communicate with your students. And like Sally even mentioned, her administration wants to know who's struggling, right? Everybody has a vested interest in making sure the student is being communicated with. If we don't communicate, we're stuck in the water, and there's no point.
And I feel like the communication and the engagement kind of go hand in hand. If they're not getting the communication, they're not going to be engaged. And so really, sometimes what I found has worked best with some students is, instead of sending the mass email, they're not going to reply or they're not going to open that mass email. But when I've reached out to them individually, one of my football players, He'll send me a weekly update. If I email him out and say, hey, Dylan, what's going on? He's going to email me. It's usually around 8 o'clock, 9, 10 at night. He'll let me know, hey, Miss Wild, I'm doing okay. Hanging in there. It's been rough. I have to go and sit on the football field every once in a while just, to feel it. But he likes knowing that I care. And for a lot of these kids, especially at the high school, they're missing their friends. They're missing you. Strangely enough, they might be sick of us during the days, but they really do miss us. And you're probably like me, that you guys miss them too. I miss them like crazy. It's kind of weird. But reaching out individually, whether it's a phone call, whether it's Remind, whether it is an individual email just to them to let them know, hey, so I saw that you did really well and you finished up. For us, it was unique. We had 2 weeks when we started to finish up the end of third quarter, and then we jumped into fourth quarter, and now we're actually on fall or spring break. It's only spring. Spring break, and next week we'll jump back in. And so we saw a lot of our engagement. The students were motivated by their grades for third quarter to finish off third quarter, but fourth quarter started and it was like half student engagement. And so we'll see when we go back next week what to expect from these students. It's kind of sounding like we're going to be here, a lot of us, for the long haul for the rest of this year. And so you're going to have to find different ways to communicate and get that engagement up. I've had a couple virtual classes. I scheduled 1 week with my students, and for some of them, they love that. They love being able to log in and say hi and see you. And then other students, they maybe will watch the recording and maybe they won't. My friend Dylan, my student Dylan, he's not going to be awake at 10 a.m. to watch that, log in to do that virtual meeting, but he'll communicate with me other ways. And so whatever way that communication is, through that communication, that's how you're going to try and work on that engagement level as well, in motivating them to do what they need to do to be able to learn the information that we're required to teach them, and so that they can show that they're getting it and worthwhile. So there's a point to all of this right now.
Right. I think Dylan's going to like when he gets to Ezra's school environment, and he can do his work at 10 o'clock at night, and it really won't matter, right? I mean, and one thing I keep telling people is online education is where education is moving, and this pandemic we're facing has just accelerated that conversation and some of the tools and resources that we're going to be. So Ezra, you're leading out there in what you're doing, because we're all going to be following your footsteps here. I got a couple questions I'm just going to go through and answer. And if you have any more, here, I'm going to actually go to the official question and answer slide here. Didn't even get to this slide. I apologize. I'm not very good with PowerPoints. Initial student setup. Let's just review real quick. Maybe make a shareable document. Get together some of your getting started tips. Ezra, I think you pointed out you even used some of the TestOut materials that are found in Instructor tools, maybe. And if you want, we can get with your account representative. We can show you where some of those resources are to help students get started. Student engagement. That's key here. Communications, calls, text, emails. Reports to track the students. Please use our reporting features to help track the students. Accessibility to an online environment now and in the future. I don't know what I meant by that. Oh, and here's Sally pointed this earlier, and this is more probably to do right now, is just understanding students' environments they're in. That might be more of a challenge with in a post-secondary environment with 2,000 students, but especially a high school student, you got to understand their schoolwork might be the least of their concerns at this point, because there's other things going on and you have to be aware of those. So
Right.
Let's just go. Go ahead.
Jump in really quick. Depending on the students, our students might be sharing technology, and they might just have the Chromebook that they checked out from the school, and the Chromebooks don't work the same as regular PCs. And so one thing that I did, my daughter's a high school student, we have 5 kids at home. And so I did check out one Chromebook to her from the school. And so it's actually been nice when my students, or I have teachers who will email me and say, my student says they can't do this. And I've been using my daughter as a guinea pig to kind of work through some of those Chromebook problems to figure out what can be done on the Chromebook or the workaround, because they'll be able to access it, especially with TestOut in this online simulation. They'll be able to do it, just being able to walk them through those steps sometimes and being able to see it through that in. And all of us don't have that accessibility because you might not have a Chromebook at home. And so, you know, just reach out to your students, and because you'll find for some of them it works and some of them just don't know that workaround. And so use your students as guides to help you guide the other students that are having problems.
Yeah, great advice there. Let's talk about TestOut will work on a Chromebook. If you call in this, talk to our support team, they will tell you that it'll work just as well as anything else on a Chromebook. So if you got an old, not so great, I hate to use the term crappy Chromebook, but it'll work as well as anything else on that crappy Chromebook. So for the most time, most of the newer Chromebooks have enough processing power and are updated enough that that hasn't been an issue. I've got several districts throughout the United States that are using Chromebooks exclusively. One question that was out there was, if a student has Office 365, then they can use TestOut. Yeah, they can use TestOut because it's all done in the browser. So they actually do not need once again, they do not need the live application. And so that's how Ezra is able to have 2,000 students on multiple Mac, PC, Chromebook, whatever it is. They're doing everything in the simulated environment. So you don't have to worry about whether they've downloaded Office 2016 and they're running on a Mac. That's not going to matter because everything's done in the simulated environment. Let's see. Do you know the success rate of students using TestOut and passing the designated Microsoft Office Specialist program? Ezra, do you have any data on your student pass rate or how they do?
So that's not required. Like I mentioned before, we use just a kind of a truncated version, and so students have that option, which is an awesome option and something that I highly recommend for students. But I don't have any data on how many of them actually go through with that.
Okay, I'm going to share. I had this very same question asked. In fact, it was yesterday, well, actually 2 days ago in Brevard County, Florida. A teacher asked me that very question, like, hey, what's the pass rate? And I can tell this is coming from a high school teacher because high schools, a lot of states center their learning objectives on that Microsoft test. She didn't really love my answer. I said it's going to depend on your student. It's going to depend on their engagement. It's going to depend upon your teacher. TestOut will prepare them for those exams, but you have a lot of other factors. I can share with you several teachers that have a high pass rate in the 90s. I can show you some of the other amazing teachers, but their student demographic is different, and they may be happy to have their students passing in the 60s. So there's not a cut and dry way to answer that one. I will tell you it's going to be student engagement. The resources are there for them to learn and pass with a high level proficiency though. And for the students that are engaged and using the reports to track whether they're engaged and whether they're going through material will be a good resource for you as you go through that. Let's see, a couple other questions. Here's one for Ezra. Ezra, how many students do you have in one online session, not per term? Or do you really have 2,000 students online at the same time? That's a good question. Maybe tell us a little bit about how your classes are structured.
So it's basically the same as a normal class. I liken it back to freshman biology. I was in a class auditorium style that had thousands of students, and it was kind of that approach, utilizing TAs and whatnot. So that's kind of the approach. But yeah, I'll have this term I have around 2,000 students.
That's amazing.
In however many sections.
That's awesome. And I love that. That's one of the best things about TestOut is the scalability. I'm going to bring up our IT products, but the ability to have the students learn the content in such a scalable manner is huge. Let's see. Any other questions coming through? Let me just see here. Give me 1 second. Just some tips here. Speakers using a headset are easier to understand. Let's see. I'm not seeing any other questions that jump out. We'll come back through, and if you've asked some of these questions, we'll try to get back and answer some of these, especially some of the more common ones. We're going to try to get in our Facebook community. So once again, if you want to go to that, so we'll let you get any questions in that environment. Aubrey, back at the home base, any other questions you want to let me know of? And I'm going to just jump ahead to this next slide here. If you would like to learn more about TestOut or get hold of any of your account managers, you'll see on your screen here, we've got instructor resource, or sorry, contact information. It's just general contact information here, both for the higher education as well as any high school programs. If you're looking to try it out, would love to put you on a grant, and we can offer some of those grants that are available right now. And once again, join our TestOut community, TestOut instructor community on Facebook. Okay. Lastly, if any of you would like to learn more, yeah, please reach out. The contact information's here. Let us know if we can help. If you'd like to just bounce some ideas off, Ezra or Sally, I'm sure would be, as well as we have a whole bunch of TestOut users. I'd say if you want to know how TestOut's being used in your specific area, reach out to the account managers over that area in those institutions. They can put you in touch with other teachers. One thing I find out about TestOut teachers is we're willing to share and help each other out and put together some best practices. That's why a lot of them are on here today. So lastly, just if you have any questions, reach out to us, join the Facebook community. High school students, high school teachers, testout.com/K12 grant, and then there's the information of where the higher ed instructors can view some of the online labs as well. Thanks, Ezra. Sally, any parting thoughts, questions, concerns?
Be patient. Good luck.
Yeah, that's some good advice, Sally. I would say, this is a learning experience for you, and maybe this fall, maybe it's just moving into maybe a little bit of a hybrid model. You're pulling some resources online, and some you're going to keep it in hopefully a traditional sense. Any last thoughts, Ezra, from you?
Say good luck too, and I think now more than ever, regardless of K-12 or upper education, our students need us, and so we're definitely here to provide that steadying impact in a world that's definitely not steady at the moment. So.
Right. I always tell teachers, thanks for being there. Thanks for being a teacher. You're leading the next generation. We need teachers. We need dedicated teachers. So not only thanks to Sally and Ezra, but thanks to all of you that are joining us today. With that, we'll be done. And good luck. Stay safe out there. Stay socially isolated, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks.